Larry Lesser, I think, is a year or two older than I am.
Oh, I see.
I'm 79. I think he's around 81. And Paul and I are the same age. I think Don Weilerstein is also the same age. I think so.
I see. Okay, yes, we're currently live
Oh,
on both platforms. So we're just 5 minutes earlier of schedule, but if you can just give some opening remarks, that'll be great.
okay. So we're starting?
Yes.
Very good. All right. Let's dive right in. I want to talk about practicing. Um, I practice seriously my entire life, every day, hours. But I didn't always practice well. I think practicing well all the time is a huge challenge. But what I wanted to share with whoever's watching, I had strategies to try to turn either a useless session or a negative practice session into a positive one. And I know that practicing is it's a very personal kind of thing. Um, but no matter how personal it is, we all have to reach the same result. So our practicing has to be effective. So the first thing that I had to be was honest. I had to be honest with myself. If I did something 25 times in a row and it didn't sound any better, something was wrong. What did Einstein say? The definition of insanity is doing something over and over again the same way and expecting a different result. Well, anyway, so I had to be aware. I had to be aware of what I was doing. So the next step was I had to ask myself, was I concentrating well? And what I mean by concentrating is, um, was I listening? Was I aware of everything? So sometimes I was, and sometimes I wasn't. I have to say, on some days I could practice successfully for an hour or two in a row, and really be aware of everything, thinking, listening. I had a little formula: make a plan, play, judge, plan, play, judge. And after each of those sequences where I made a plan, I played, and I judged, the judgment led to the next sequence, plan, play, judge, because generally speaking, the judgment was there's more work to do. So let's say I knew I was concentrating poorly. Um, the next step that I took was there were two possible ways out. One was to take a break, and the other, which also worked successfully, was I put something else on the stand. Let's say I had been practicing octaves, and I was frustrated with it, and I was getting bored and frustrated. Well, then I put whatever concerto I was playing on the stand, and by switching what I was paying attention to, it renewed my interest. So that was one way that I could turn a negative practice session into a positive one. But again, it turned on my being honest with myself and really examining, well, how well am I using my mind? Another idea that was very important to me came from F.M. Alexander, the man behind the Alexander technique. He had two concepts. I mentioned them, I think, in the first CelloChat that I did. Two concepts that I thought were very useful. One was end gaining, and the other was the means whereby. What he meant by end gaining was that you want to do something and you try to do it immediately. You want to play the Dvorak concerto and you try to play it immediately. Well, you can't. It doesn't work, for most of us anyway. And then what he meant by the means whereby was that then you figure out the means whereby you can slowly progress toward being able to play whatever piece it is that you want to play. So he was an actor, and he lost his voice, and he tried and tried and tried and tried, and what didn't get anywhere. He was doing end gaining, and then he figured out the means whereby he could develop enough control over his voice to have an acting career. This is really important to me. I have done end gaining lots of times in my life. Oh, I just wanted to play this, play it great, and of course it didn't work. And then I had to stop and say, wait a minute. what are the means whereby I'm going to play this concerto, this suite, this excerpt well? And then I started going step by step. Now, another way that I worked my way out of practice sessions that were not being successful was through sensations. And I remember it was from Gregor Piatigorsky that I got this idea. First of all, you know, the French say tirer, pull, and pousser, push. Up and down, you have no sense of touching anything. But as soon as you talk about pulling and pushing, there is actually contact with something. You feel you're doing something, you're working with something. And the mind is no longer active, but your sense of touching something and listening is. I think Gregor Piatigorsky had two phrases which I found very helpful as a teacher and as a student. He said, feel the string and use the stick. Feel the string and use the stick. I have to tell you, there were many, many cello lessons that I gave where somebody was playing, whatever it was they were playing, and it wasn't going well because they were thinking about something that actually had nothing to do. Either they were afraid or nervous or I don't know what it was. But I put this idea in their mind, use the stick, feel the string. And suddenly, from having a disorganized kind of mind, I'm sure you all know how it feels when one gets scared or nervous or uncomfortable. They had something to do. And their playing improved immediately. Now, I want to tell a favorite anecdote of mine about a famous cellist giving a master class, and this has to do with touching the instrument. It was Leonard Rose, I believe. Somebody got up and played, and they got nervous, and they forced, and everything went badly. And Leonard Rose picked up the student's cello and said, you know, when you play, it's like you're saying to the cello, play, damn it! He said, no. You've got to say, come on, baby. Well, I'm sure I'm not the only person who's done play, damn it. But the idea certainly, in most situations, is, come on, baby. Touch me gently, touch me carefully, listen to me. You know, see how I respond, but don't force me. As a human being, the cello is a living thing. And sometimes I think, can you look at life from the point of view of a cello string? Well, I have to tell you, as a person, people who have pressed on me, forced me, treated me badly, tried to get me to do something I didn't want to do, I rebelled. I'm a great rebeller, by the way. And the cello does the same thing. You touch it in a way that it doesn't like. The most honest relationship you will ever have in your life is with a musical instrument. It will tell you when you're touching it badly. So that's one thing that I wanted to mention also. This idea of, come on, baby, as a really good way to get yourself to touch the cello with the intention of touching it beautifully and with skill. Now let's see. Oh yes, I know something I've done. I've said to myself and I've said to students, oh, we have some questions. Okay, I will continue with this when there are gaps in the questions. So let me go now to answering some questions. Let's see. Paul Lee, are there any helpful tips and tricks on nailing the second page of the Dvorak Concerto First Movement? Well, Paul, I did dee dee da da dee da. Okay, if you can't play something slowly, if you can't do da ya dee dee da ya dee, if you can't do that perfectly in tune, when I say perfectly, I mean perfectly. Well, then how can you possibly play the piece as it's written? Now, this is an example of end gaining. And listen, I'm as guilty as anybody else. It's not so easy to say to yourself, I'm not going to move the level of difficulty one notch higher, play it any faster, until I can play that entire passage perfectly in tune. That takes a lot of patience, and end gaining is a question of impatience. So I have played the Dvorak Concerto a few times. I have to tell you, I took that passage. I'm assuming it's the one you're referring to. I insisted I would not move the level of challenge up until I had mastered that passage one whole note at a time and could play it perfectly. Then I moved the challenge up one notch, maybe ta dee dee dee, and then finally ta ya dee dee, yada da dum, yada. There were maybe 6 or 7 steps, and in the end, because I hadn't gone beyond the step where I had look, if you can play it well, dee da da da, that is set. Then you can move up a step. But I never moved beyond the step where I knew, yes, I can do it this way. Now I'm ready to move on. Oh, I hope that was helpful. Okay, just a second here. Oh, I'm falling so far behind. Wait a minute. Sorry. Oh, I was in the wrong. Okay. Rosemary Clark, I'm just learning the cello at 63 years old. Any advice? Maybe something that you wish someone had told you when you started. Rosemary, you need to find a good teacher. Somebody who is skilled at helping people start. There are lots of teachers who will be able to help a beginner, whether it's somebody who's 5 years old or your age. And the process is a very patient one. And the key thing is, if you love the quest, which my life has been motivated by a love for the quest to play beautifully and to be a musician, then it is, if you find a good teacher, that is the single most important thing, and then do what they tell you to do, and go patiently. I realize that's kind of an obvious answer, but I think it's the good one. Question from Ivan Luza. Do you have suggestions on how to prepare for uncomfortable 3-string chords, such as the chords in the Gigue of the 6th Suite? Well, I'm going to give you an answer that may irritate you a little bit. The 6th Suite is not written for the cello. The 6th Suite is written for an instrument with 5 strings. And if you've ever tried playing the 6th Suite with an added E string, it's almost all in first position, and the chords are very easy to play. The only thing that I can say is don't be rough with them. When you touch the string, don't be too near the bridge. Get to a place where the notes sound, but that's all I can say, because to be honest with you, I have never quite understood why they refer to the 6 Bach suites. There are 5 of them. The 6th is for a completely different instrument. Now, I'm going to give you a hint. Try playing the 6th Suite in G major, a 5th down. Then dee da 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 dee da. Ya da da dee da dee 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 dee. It's with the open A string. And if you play, which movement are you talking about? Yeah, if you play the chords in the Gigue, in G major, it'll give you a hint, because they'll be very easy. They'll be much lower, and they'll sound better, and you'll play them more easily. That might give you a hint on how to make them sound better when you're playing it in D major. Natalie Flintrop, do you have any tips on how to practice Bach suites? I'm working, you too, this Gigue of the 6th Suite now, but any tips would be helpful. The only thing that I can say is to practice very slowly. Actually, you know what? I just had, that wasn't a bad idea what I just said. Play, you can do it very easily. Just pretend that the key signature is a bass clef and not the clef, not the tenor clef. Everything will drop a 5th, and they'll be easy, because all of the chords are going to be in the lower positions, and even with open strings. When you get a feeling for how you want to make them sound and how to use the bow, then playing the piece in D major, I think that might be helpful. But I'm just being honest with you. I find that piece, the 6th Suite, it's true, I have heard some people play it very well. But I'm repeating myself, it's not written for the cello. It's very awkward. The key thing is not to force. I don't know if that was a helpful answer. If it wasn't, please ask me another question. Okay, so that's all the questions right now. So let me continue with what I was going to talk about. Oh, this is fascinating. It's called bilateral transfer. So I'm back on the subject of how to practice well. I don't know if any of you know the name Robert Gardner, because I learned this from Bob Gardner. Robert Gardner was one of Leonard Rose's best cello students, a fantastic, passionate, powerful sounding cellist. He was the principal cellist of the New York City Opera for many years, of the Aspen Festival Orchestra. He had many students. He was a fixture in New York's musical life. By the way, he's still alive. I'm not using the past tense. But Bob Gardner, the best thing about Bob is he's my friend. He showed me something that I didn't understand before. He called it bilateral transfer. What that refers to is that the two halves of the body affect each other. When we walk, if you walk forward with your right foot, you swing your left arm, and vice versa. Nobody walks with their right arm and the right leg forward at the same time. The size of the body influence each other, in fact control each other. How is that important for cello playing? If you squeeze with the right hand, you're going to squeeze with the bow. If you slow down the bow before a shift, the signal going across your body is slow down just when you need to move. If you want to maintain a strong contact between your left hand and the cello, and you lighten your grip, let's say you're playing pianissimo, but the left hand basically always has to play forte. Well, the transfer is you're going to lose the connection and the security with your left hand. Now, I have something that all of you can try, but you'll need a friend to do this with. Can't really do it by yourself. And it's going to prove the point I've just made. So I want you, find a friend, tell your friend, wiggle the fingers of both of your hands as fast as you can. Now watch your right hand. And then you tell your friend to make a fist with their left hand. You will see in 9 cases out of 10, the fingers of the right hand will totally stop moving. Totally. Sometimes there's just a little bit of a hesitation. I have never once seen somebody who can do this exercise where when you made a fist with this hand, that the right hand didn't react. This was a huge revelation to me. Thank you, Bob. Because sometimes I played for something for Bob, and I missed it. And I had a well-trained left hand. Thank you, Mr. Starker. And I said, Bob, I don't understand. He said, Mike, it's not your left hand, it's your bow. Because either I was squeezing, or I was slowing the bow down before the shift, but I was doing something on the side of my body that I wasn't even paying attention to that had a big effect, a harmful effect on what I was doing with my left hand. Let's see, are there any more questions? Not yet. Oh, yes, this is an interesting one too. I was a student with a wonderful, we were students together, Tsuyoshi Tsutsumi and I. He was one of Mr. Starker's best students, a wonderful cellist and soloist from Japan. And one time I was talking with Tsuyoshi, and I was talking about the problem that we all have, that we spend all of our time in small practice rooms. And then suddenly we have to walk out on the stage and there's no sound. And we feel like we're lost. And then yours starts pressing and forcing. Well, Tsuyoshi gave me a little mental exercise, which I have found very useful when I remembered to use it. He said, when you're in the practice room, close your eyes, and imagine the recital hall that you know better than any other hall in the world, that you can see it. And put yourself on stage, and put a friend of yours in the last row. Eyes are closed. I'm visualizing the concert hall, and the friend and now play for them. It was a very effective way of helping me to realize whatever I was doing in the practice room, maybe I was playing too lightly, or that's probably what it was. I wasn't focusing the sound enough. It was not going to reach the friend of mine sitting in the last row effectively. So I found that a very helpful trick. Again, the talking that I've been doing, the subject has been, how do you turn problems that you're having during a practicing session when you know things aren't going well, and you're not sure what you can do to alter the way you're thinking about your work. What can you do to make things more effective? The last thing that I want to mention on this subject, let me see if there are any questions. My goodness, nobody's asking questions. I hope some more questions. Here's something. Okay, that's the second. Okay. Hey, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Let's see. Okay. Okay. Angelica Risopoulou. Sometimes I'm troubling setting goals while practicing, focus on the little things, especially when I start my practice sessions. Do you have any advice on that? Well, yes. I have to say, I organized my practice sessions very clearly. I mentioned this in an earlier program. I read an interview with Jascha Heifetz many, many years ago. And he said that he divided his practice sessions into two parts. One for technical work that everybody has to do to develop and a good foundation and repertoire. And the technical work were, scales in thirds, sixths, octaves. Uh, um, uh, he probably did tenths, trill exercises, bowing exercises, etudes, shifting exercises, all those kinds of things. So what I did, and by the way, you don't have to do things in any special order, but I did all of them. All the things I just listed, scales, maybe scales in different bowings, scales, thirds, in sixths, in octaves. Trill exercises, there are lots of good ones. I did the ones that Mr. Starker had, but there are lots of others. Uh, Shifting exercises, bowing exercises and open strings, which I personally found very helpful, because if you can't make the cello, if we can't make the cello sound beautiful with open strings, adding the left hand is not going to help anything. So I like to ascertain that I could make the cello ring and sing just by doing exercises on the open strings. There's a book by Fritz Magg, who was a very well M-A-G-G, very well known cello teacher, taught at Indiana for many years, called Cello Exercises. It has some very good exercises at open strings. But the answer to your question is, I organized my time very carefully. I usually practice at least 4 hours a day. And in the first period, there always were the things I mentioned, and I also always did etudes. And the thing about etudes, the thing about all of this is, you want to set your challenge difficult enough so that it's interesting and challenging, but not so difficult that it's frustrating and you give up. There's a sweet spot where it's just difficult enough to draw your attention and to make you feel, yes, I need to do this to improve. But if you set the level too high, let's say if really you're ready to do some earlier pop or etudes and you start doing Piatti or something like that, well, that's going to be frustrating. At least, I found it frustrating. So if you organize your time, you might try actually say, 10 minutes on this, 10 minutes of that, 10 minutes of this. I don't know how much you practice, but that is what I did, because I'm an example of somebody, and by the way, I have to say, practicing, it's a very personal matter. And I am an example of somebody. If I had not practiced in a highly organized way, I never could have learned to play well. I did not have some kind of intuitive, natural gift for playing the cello, but I was a good worker, and I wanted it desperately. And so, either from my teachers or what I learned as I went on, I developed a way of practicing. I touched on everything. I mentioned this last time. Let's say you don't practice octaves. And by the way, I mean 2 or 3 minutes a day. If you didn't practice octaves at all, and then you ran into an octave passage in the Dvorak concerto or the Saint-Saëns concerto or the Rococo variations, and you had no ability to play octaves at all, it would be impossible. So basically, I touched on all the elements, all the foundational elements of a good technique for half my practice time, and the other half I practiced repertoire. Oh, right. Okay. Question from Theodotul. Do you have any helpful advice specifically for people who would like to start learning the cello in their 40s? First of all, enjoy it. Listen, what is music for? Music has added joy. Music adds joy to everybody's life. So I don't think you need that advice from me. You obviously are looking for a way to add joy to your life. And then it's the same answer I gave to another person. You need to find a good teacher. This is not something that one can do on one's own. The cello has been played well for at least a good 300 years. And there's a long tradition of how one acquires a good technical command of the instrument. Because if one doesn't learn to play in an organized way, it just remains a very frustrating set of obstacles because it's not easy. So that's kind of a silly answer I gave you. Forgive me, but find a good teacher and enjoy. Okay, Christian Hebert. I've heard that we should engage the lower back muscles in the bowing motion, but how? Do you have any exercises on how to develop a good right arm motion without having tension anywhere? Christian, I have an exercise I want you to do right now. I want you to stretch your right leg out and pretend that the top of your leg is the back of a really big dog, like a Great Dane or one of those Swiss mountain dogs. Now, I want you to pet that dog's back. Do you feel that the energy is coming all the way from your back, all the way down your arm, all the way through your fingers, and there's no obstacles in your arm at all, and the dog is feeling a really deep, firm touch? That is the feeling that I have. Whoops, wait a minute. Sorry, I'm going to drop something here. The feeling that I have in my bow arm, whoops, just a second, it is this. You see what I look like? It's the same feeling of this. So when you say lower back, no, it's the same group of muscles with which you are petting the dog's back. And I'm telling you that when I want to play strongly, this is exactly the feeling I have. The energy, there are no blockades, there are no blockages. My shoulder isn't tight. Keep petting the dog's back. My shoulder isn't tight. Oh, the end pin is slipping. My shoulder is not tight. My elbow is not tight. My wrist is not tight, and my fingers are not tight. I have found that a very effective way of looking for the set of sensations that you're trying to find. I hope that was helpful. Oh, Nancy Lapine. Hello, Nancy. I remember you very well. Hi. Advice on individual finger sensibility, more fitting in with cross transfer. Well, the only thing that I understand very well about the left hand is something I learned from Mr. Starker, which is that the only finger that has any playing tension in it is the finger that's actually playing. So my first finger now is playing. As soon as I put my second finger down, I don't do that. I've released. My second finger is resting. Third fingers, the others are all resting. Fourth finger. And when I play, every time I put a finger down, I release all the tension. I don't put them out of shape because they have to be ready to play. I release all the tension in the fingers. The finger that was playing goes to a relative state of relaxation, and that is why I never get tired with my left hand, because the part is working is the only part that has any playing tension in it, and it immediately rests when it's finished working. So that the left hand, actually the same for the right hand, this is a slightly different explanation, never stays in a permanent state of contraction. I hope that was helpful. It's nice to hear from you too. I hope it was helpful. By the way, if any of the answers I've given, if you didn't find them helpful, write me another question and I'll try to do better. Question from Adi Combray. Was wondering if there were any ways to strengthen the index finger while playing in the thumb position. Okay, this is a really interesting question. My finger is too long. If you look at videos, Yo-Yo Ma, Rostropovich, Mr. Starker, I don't care who you look at, almost without exception, they are doing what you're saying, because the finger here is one thing. Here, the finger's too long. So in order to get the pad onto the string and to have a secure connection to the string, almost every cellist I know, listen, I'm sure there are exceptions, but what you are complaining about is actually what everybody does. It's what I do. I was just watching, I was watching Mr. Piatigorsky play. And he was an enormous guy. I'm reasonably tall. I don't know what he was, 6'5", 6'6". He was playing the Allegro Appassionato of Saint-Saëns. And it's a fantastic performance if you haven't seen it. And by God, he got up here, as a and his first finger looked like that. So actually, no, I don't know how tall, I don't know how big, everybody's hand is different. But I've generally very rarely seen any cellists, unless they were just playing on their first finger. If they had to continue, look, I can't. If I'm going to continue, look what what my hand looks like is that. Same here. Here, no. I generally do not collapse. I hope that was helpful. That was a great question. I'm glad you asked it. But no, this is something you don't need to worry about, in my opinion. All right. Do you think age affects us in music? I started playing cello 6 months ago. I'm 22. After dreaming about playing it for more than 10 years. I'm sorry, I'm reading too fast. Is there such a thing as being late for music at all? You know, it depends what you mean. I think to seek a professional career as a player when one starts that late without any background at all, that might be too hard. I actually am a late starter, but I didn't start without any background in the cello. When I was your age, approximately, I was an amateur. I wasn't a very good amateur. I wasn't a very good one, but I was an amateur. So I had some background. I had done some study. But the thing is, too late for what? I want to tell you a little anecdote. So I dropped out of Harvard, and I was all thrilled. I was finally going to study the cello, and I ran into it was an older man at the time. He was a violist in the Boston Symphony. And I knew him. I said, "Oh my God, Mr. Lehner, I've dropped out of Harvard. I'm going to study the cello." He said, "If you can do anything else with your life than become a musician, you should do that." Well, I mean, I don't know why he said that. Maybe he hadn't had a very happy career as a musician. It didn't stop me. But the thing is, music is to add joy to life. There's no such thing as being too late. But on the other hand, to have a realistic ambition of being able to compete with people who started when they were 5 or 6 years old, and you're starting very late. I think that it might be too much to dream of, but to be a happy amateur? That's what Lehner said. Lehner said the happiest musicians are amateur musicians. So become a good amateur musician, and you'll get the best of it, I promise you. All right, let's see. Do you have any the third finger stronger? Well, the thing is this. I don't know what you mean, Natalie. My fingers, sometimes they're very rounded. Sometimes they're flatter when I want a richer sound. But my entire life, I did do finger, trill exercises. I don't know who you're studying with, but there are exercises to do. There are trill exercises, slow exercises to develop the strength and the agility of all the fingers. That's all I know. And now where the left hand is. Listen to what my left hand sounds like. So now when I'm playing with the bow, you can't hear that. But the percussive action of my left hand going up and a mild plucking action going down is one of the things that makes it possible for me to play clearly. But again, I don't know you, and I don't know where you are in your studies. But if you keep with whoever you're studying, if you keep exploring exercises to make your fingers more agile and quicker, then all of your fingers should become stronger. I hope that was an okay answer. Richard, what are some great warm-up right hand exercises? Well, to be honest with you, let me see if my cello is I do bowing exercises and open strings. So these are the whole bow. Then the exercise also, it gives you the opportunity to compare how I'm preparing the string change, and look how I'm preparing the opposite one. Then there are ones for half the bow, for the upper half of the bow. There are spiccato exercises, but you could also do them on open strings. But the the answer to your question is I almost always started my practice sessions with bowing exercises on open strings. I found it helpful because I wanted to, if I could make the open string sound good, well, then when I went to the Arpeggione Sonata, if the open string sound was like this, then I got a warm, free sound. So wait, did I answer your question? Let me see. Great warm-up right hand. That's what I did. Now, there are, you can take etudes and scales and do them with a variety of bowings. That's another that's another good way to challenge your bow arm, and with all kinds of articulations and strokes that we need to use when we play. But I personally, the first thing I did it for you. What I wanted to, can I touch this cello and make it sound beautiful and warm and ringing? That was the first thing I asked, and that's how I did it. I was doing the opening of a bowing exercise on open strings from Fritz Magg's book. It's Magg, a very well-known teacher called Cello Exercises. It's a very good book, and I did those for years. Okay. What are your best tips on thumb position, double stop practicing tense? Okay, listen, I'm going to be honest with you. When does one have to do tense? I've never played a piece in my life. There's one passage in the Haydn D major where you do tense. But I mean, tense are for the violin. The cello is too big for tense. So I'm just being honest with you. If you can name me one major piece that tense are used, with the exception of that one passage in the Haydn D major concerto. Perhaps there are others. I never practiced tense. It's like people who obsess about staccato. First of all, the Rococo variations does not need to be played with a staccato stroke. Just because Tchaikovsky put that in, he was no dummy. He knew that not every cellist would have a good bow stroke like that. So I'm sorry. I'm not meaning to be rude. Forgive me if you feel I have been. It's just something I never concentrated on because, frankly, I never needed to use it. And the one passage in the Haydn D major concerto, that one I could play. Oh, Scott. Hi, Scott. Well, this is an interesting question, and let me tell you what Gregor Piatigorsky thought. He thought that to have young students immediately play the major repertoire was a mistake because I don't want to say they burn out on it, but he liked having people play the Goltermann concertos. There are 4 of them. I think one of them, I forgot which one, is kind of easy. The others are not easy at all. So that was one thing that he suggested, and it made sense to me. Now, I personally, I didn't have a chance to play them. I own them. And actually, they're good pieces. For me, the first concerto that I played was the Saint-Saëns concerto. The next one was the Lalo. All the others, once you get to Schumann, Dvorak, Rococo variations, even the Haydn concerto. The next one was the Haydn C major. I think my teachers tried to give me challenges that were challenges, but would not totally defeat me. And something like the Dvorak concerto was way beyond. A piece that one of my teachers gave me was the Variation Concertante, something like by Böllmann, Variations for Cello and Orchestra. That was a piece that somebody gave me. It's not exactly a concerto, but it's for cello and orchestra. But all the harder concertos, Schumann, Dvorak, Rococo variations, Shostakovich, Shlomo. Shlomo is a piece that does not demand a fantastically difficult challenge technically. So I hope that was helpful. But get the Goltermann concertos and try them. I was also wondering if there were any ways to improve speed while going in and out of thumb position. Well, the only answer I can give you is to prepare. I told you, I mentioned one of Mr. Starker's big things, and I think all cellists do this. They talk about it differently. If you're going to make a shift, you don't do that. You prepare it. So if you're coming out of thumb position, if you prepare it, I remember I had a conversation with Ron Leonard many years ago. He suggested raising the hand, which is also a preparatory gesture. Mr. Starker actually rotated a little bit back, going down, and a little bit forward, going up. But the answer to your question is to prepare it, and then to wait until the last moment. I know sometimes I've been guilty of shifting too early because I was nervous about it. And actually it was my friend Bob Gardner who rounded on me. I said, Mike, wait, hold that note. You're not finished playing it. But I was nervous about the shift. So I hope that was helpful. Everything needs preparation. So that you're not making jerky gestures. But the bow is going like this. When the left hand has to move, that the motions are prepared and smooth and not jerky. I hope that was helpful. Ellen Berry, how much grip does your left hand thumb have? Well, okay, wait, sorry, Ellen, the cello doesn't have frets. I'm sorry, forgive me. How much grip does your left hand thumb have behind the frets, and where do you place your thumb in relation to fingers on frets? Ellen, maybe you're thinking of the viola da gamba. The cello fingerboard is sadly, I wish it had frets. It's a blank piece of wood, which is pretty terrifying when you start because, you don't know where the notes are. But so we don't have frets on a cello, but my thumb, generally speaking, when I'm playing, if I let my hand hang naturally, my thumb comes out approximately opposite to my middle finger. So when I'm playing with my left hand, that's approximately where my thumb is. I'm sorry I couldn't answer your question more thoroughly, but I just wonder if you're thinking about the viola da gamba, which is a fretted instrument. Nancy Lepine, could you explain anticipated and delayed shifts? Sure. Well, okay. An anticipated shift is a shift that you make. Wait, let me. An anticipated shift is a shift that you make. Oh no. Yeah, an anticipated shift is a shift you make on the old bow. A delayed shift is one that you make on the new bow. So one is a more lyrical kind of shift where you can hear the shift. And the other kind is when you want the shift to be, when you want the new note to be the first thing that you hear. So this one is anticipated. In other words, I'm making the shift before the new note. And the one that is delayed, I make the shift on the bow change so that the next note starts cleanly. The anticipated shifts, generally speaking, are more lyrical. The delayed ones are more nervous and more urgent. Nice to see you, Nancy. Okay. Victor, do you have any exercises to help strengthen the thumb for thumb position? Yes. Yes. Thirds, sixths, and octaves. In other words, when you're using your thumb, octaves, and no, not sixths. Sixths you don't use your thumb. Thirds in thumb position, octaves in thumb position. Now there are plenty of exercises. I've mentioned Mr. Starker's book, An Organized Method of String Playing. That's the best of all of them, and it's not expensive. Anybody who doesn't have that book, it's a short book. It's a gold mine of exercises to develop your left hand. And in that book, there are lots of exercises. What did you say? To help strengthen. Well, okay, I didn't answer your question. Okay, so look. You octaves, because, you have to press the thumb down. If you do, first of all, be careful, okay? You can hurt yourself. You have to press your thumb down to play fifths. There's a lot of pressure going here. You could practice fifths. You could practice octaves, where at least then you only have to hold one string down. And then in general, Exercises in thumb position, Mr. Starker's are excellent. All of those things should help. But the key thing here is, remember I talked early in the program about end gaining? End gaining means you have a goal and you just want it. You want to do it now. Well, I'm telling you, I have seen lots of people, believe it or not, hurt themselves playing the cello. I mean, come on, this is not a weightlifting contest. It's not an Olympic event. But people, they try so hard. They rush. They want it so badly. And you know what? They wear things out. I had more than one student who came to me so injured. I sent them to the Cleveland Clinic. Nobody could help them. Whatever you do, the hands are delicate. Somebody asked me about the back. The back is strong. The hand is a very delicate instrument. Whatever you do, if you're developing a new skill, please go at it slowly, a few minutes a day. I remember Mr. Starker said, don't do finger exercises, like his trill exercises. Don't do them more than 15 minutes a day. Because at a certain point, it's counterproductive. You're tiring yourself, you're straining yourself, and the increase in skill, actually, it goes away. I hope that was helpful. Be careful, okay? But fifths, just with your thumb, octaves, but I'd recommend, if your thumb is weak, do 2-3 minutes a day, but 7 days a week. I'm telling you, I am 79 years old. I never injured myself once. And, I have something that's kind of interesting. At some point, I developed a system where I placed sensors all through my body, everywhere, sensors. And in my brain was a meter, and there was a red zone. And I made sure that the needle, no matter what joint it was, if the needle moved into the red zone, I stopped. You can strain yourself, you can hurt yourself, but doing this most beautiful, gentle, loving kind of thing in life, which is making music. So try installing sensors, just like real sensors, but they're mental. So you are always keeping track. How am I feeling? How am I using myself? Am I straining? Because I'm telling you, I have known so many people who either had to totally stop playing, had to stop playing for a significant period. There is no reason. This is not an Olympic event. This is something, of course there's some forceful pieces. Obviously, I don't mean that you show, it should be namby-pamby, Mary had a little lamb. But on the other hand, if you're going to play forcefully, you have to build up for it, and you have to know how to do it, and that's why one studies. I hope that was helpful. Okay, I'd love to hear you play. Well, I hope you do too. Okay, wait a minute. Oh, wow, wait a minute. Oh, I'm behind. Okay, Ellen, sorry, I didn't mean to offend you. And yes, new cellists do have tape on their fingerboards. Forgive me, I didn't mean to be offensive, but my thumb is basically behind my second finger. Charlonda Fitzgerald, any tips for improving? Okay, I'll be honest with you, Charlonda. I was never particularly a good sight reader. Did it stop me? No, I practiced more. Now, if you are in a part of the music profession where you have to show up for gigs and there's no rehearsing and you don't have any music, then it's a skill you know. But I didn't do that kind of work. Generally speaking, I had a chance to practice everything I played. But the answer to your question is, it is a question of once your mind has digested what you're looking at, continuing to look at that set of notes, it's already stored here. You have to train yourself for your eye to, you have to train yourself for your eye to keep moving forward. Because to keep looking at something that you've already stored in your mind and know that you're planning to do that is the measure of a bad sight reader. You keep looking at what you already know you're going to do. So try to train yourself to steadily look forward no matter what. You can do it at home. It can be with a piece but I think it's a discipline that you can acquire yourself of always, whatever you're playing, it's already stored here. Look at the next passage, the next group of notes you're going to play. I hope that was helpful. Let's see here. Hello, Georgetown. Have your thoughts on intonation would be great. How to practice a passage for clean intonation effectively, how long it takes for a passage to be in tune. Georg, sorry, not George, Georg. Georg, I practice so slowly, one note at a time. Now, look, the whole issue of intonation, it's a complicated one. Why is it complicated? Because a note that plays a melodic role in the passage can be played one way, And a note that plays a harmonic role, in other words, it needs to fit into a chord, might be played very differently. I'll give you an example. An E that wants to fit into an E major chord has to be on the low side to fit the overtone series. But if that E is a melodic note leading to an F, you might want to bump it up a little bit so that the intonation, that the note has the sense of wanting to move toward its resolution. I'm just being honest with you. I practice so slowly. Oh, I have to tell you an anecdote, and maybe this will help you. Yes, I'm a pianist, not a cellist. Rachmaninoff lived his later years in Los Angeles. He was a great pianist. A friend of his came to visit him. And summertime, the windows were open. Rachmaninoff was practicing. The friend had no idea what the piece was. He went in, and he went up to Rachmaninoff's piano. It was a Mozart piano concerto that the visitor had played many times. Can you imagine? Sergei Rachmaninoff. I'm telling you, every great musician I have known practiced something like this. Because if you practice too quickly, you can't even decide, well, where do I want to put this note? And again, whether the note plays a melodic or harmonic role, the luxury we have on the stringed instrument is that we can do all kinds of things with the notes we play. You can shade notes many different ways. But my answer to your question, okay, I'm going to tell you something about myself. I was not some kind of fancy cellist. The first time I played the Dvorak concerto, I started 1 year ahead of the concert date, one note at a time, the whole piece. Until I could play the whole Dvorak concerto one note at a time, more or less with the intonation that I wanted. Because listen, if I couldn't play it slowly, what was some miracle going to happen when I went quickly? Well, of course not. Now, of course, the faster I went, some things changed. Maybe as the process went by, I decided, wait a minute, no, I don't want to play that note that low. I think it would sound better. But I have always worked very, very slowly. I needed to. But never mind me. I told an anecdote about Lynn Harrell, of all people, who was probably the most gifted cellist I have ever been around. Lynn told me he practiced that way. And Rostropovich's daughter told me her father practiced that way, and I wasn't going to? Me, of all people? So just take your time, enjoy. The key thing here is if you don't enjoy practicing, the things I'm saying are just a big drag. But I loved it. I loved it because when I was successful, this was my dream, to play beautifully, to play music that meant the world to me. But this is how I had to work. I hope that was a good answer. Sorry I spoke for such a long time. Martha. Hi, Martha. I hope I'll be in Boston soon. Hi. Hello from Albany. Hello, Will. I'd love to hear you play. Well, I hope you have a chance too. I have recently been, Sam Martinez, I have recently been digging into my bow arm. I'm not sure I like that image. Because of a shoulder pain. And it's going good, but I just would like to hear your thoughts on the weight of your arm and how you hold the bow. Okay. I think I showed this once. I'm pretending to balance a tennis ball on my fingertips. So my hand is a shape, but to balance a tennis ball, it's light. I don't have to squeeze. It's a light level of contraction. I turn my hand over, and that's how I hold the bow. It's that simple. Now, okay, wait. So just 1 second. Well, okay, look. Okay, wait. Let's talk about this because this is very confusing. An arm, I don't know what arm weighs. 15 pounds. We're not putting 15 pounds of pressure into the cello. First of all, you have to pick your arm up to play. Let's not talk about arm weight. I've always thought that that's very, very, very an illusory way of talking about it. Okay, so when I play, I'm releasing a certain amount of arm weight into the cello, but I'm also, if this is coming from my shoulder, it's not like I'm hanging my arm. The weight of my arm, you'd measure it now, but I'm holding my arm up. Now here, the arm's out here. What's the point of talking about arm weight? I actually am manipulating the stick with my right hand. I've talked about that, how Mr. Starker talked about the bow arm. It's very relaxed here because the hand is right over the string. So, I mean, how difficult is that? You just relax your arm as much as you want, as much as you need. So there's enough sound. Okay, now, as I go out, the energy is out here. That's why we have a bow stick. And so my hand is very relaxed at the frog. And as I go out to equalize the pressure, I use a rotational movement of my hand against the stick to increase the pressure into the string. And when I come back, I relax that pressure. The people who hurt themselves, injure themselves with the bow, are pressing all the time. And pressure is not there. Please think of pulling and pushing, but not pressing. And the idea of using different parts, using different ways of transferring energy into the cello at different parts of the bow stroke, that is what they're not doing. They're doing the same. If you're keeping your arm contracted the whole time, you're going to injure yourself. My hand, everything is very relaxed here. Well, I mean, how hard is it to do that? But out here, whoa! How am I going to get energy that far? That's the bow is a tool to set the string in vibration. That's all it is. But I actually talked about this a good deal in my earlier programs. There are 2 other cello chats. I talked a good deal about Mr. Starker and how we taught the bow arm, and I hope that's helpful. I hope that was helpful. Okay, now. Darren Johnson, how should I be using my bow when playing the 3rd movement of Haydn so that I can get a clean sound when playing fast instead of notes mumbled up? Well, I'm not sure which concerto by Haydn you mean, but I'm assuming that it's this one in C major. Well, look, listen, don't kid yourself. I'm not going to try you have to make sure the bow actually has to set the string in vibration for every note. So go slowly. Sorry, I've not played this in a while. If this is the passage you're talking about, that is the template. That's the sound I want to hear. And what you do from that, if you can play the whole passage like that clearly, well, that wasn't bad. Then you go slowly, faster. Now, I want to tell you a story. I have a friend who's a great violinist. You know what he told me? I mean, he's a master. He told me if he hasn't played the Tchaikovsky Violin Concerto for years, the 3rd movement, he puts the metronome, yum diddle, let's say yum diddle da 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 biddle. Okay, can he play it at that tempo? If the answer is yes, click 1 notch, because he can't fall below the one he already could do, and he bumps it up 1 notch at a time until yum ba da ba ba ba. I'm talking about a great master. I'm not talking. That's how this guy practices. So any of us who think that you know what? I'm back to end gaining. All of us want to accomplish things more quickly than they generally can be accomplished. Look, at least that's what I've noticed. By the way, I've seen it myself. Don't think I'm speaking critically about everybody else. Everything I'm talking about, I've struggled with myself. And then the thing is, either I overcame it, or I was never going to play well. So what I just did for you, that sounded good. Every note was clear, and I go through the whole passage like that. What metronome, if you could do it that way at that metronome marking perfectly, clear tone and tune, 1 notch, and you keep going until you get to the tempo you want. Because if you verified that at a certain speed you played well, you can't fall below that. You already mastered that. So in other words, you can't fall all the way back to the bottom because you've mastered each step along. I hope that was helpful. The thing is, what I'm basically saying again and again, I don't know I don't know any of you. I know some of you, but I mean, I have to tell you, I worked so slowly and so carefully, but why? I wanted this so badly. I mean, yeah, I'm like everybody else. You think I do things that bore me or that annoy me or, no, of course not. It's just this is the one thing I wanted more than anything else in my entire life. And I was prepared to do anything and everything that either I learned or that my teachers suggested or friends. I learned a lot from friends that friends suggested that I do. And I enjoyed the work. Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming that everybody who's watching that they love playing and love music. But the thing is, sometimes I've heard people say, "Oh, I want to do music." Yeah, well, that's fine on an amateur level, but on a professional level, unfortunately, this is not an easy career. As if anybody needs to hear it from me, and also it's a very unfair career in the sense that I know many people who should have been successful and weren't. And it's a very competitive environment with not all that many opportunities. Yeah, big revelation, right? Well, if you want to have a chance, at this whole thing, the things I'm sharing with you about working with your full intelligence and discipline and capacity to listen and capacity to care and a capacity not to rush, to be patient. It is absolutely central to the whole thing. So Darren, I spoke for an awfully long time, but I do hope that was helpful. Scott, I'm sorry. Don't be sorry to ask another question. I love it. In the Janos Starker control that involves shifting, page 30, do you shift on the new finger or I know I should? You know what? I'll look. I don't have the book in front from second. Do you shift on the new finger or another? One can shift on an old finger and put the new finger down, or one can shift on the finger, the same finger that is going to the note. So in the particular exercise you're talking about, I'm not quite sure, but those are the two ways of shifting. Either you shift on the same finger that you're going to go to, or you shift on the old finger and you land on a new finger. And echo. I feel weak on thumb. Do you have any advice to strengthen it? Greetings from Mexico. Great chat. Thank you. Thirds, octaves. Mr. Starker's book. It's not expensive. It's called An Organized Method of String Playing. The book is full of exercises in all the positions on the cello. And listen, Mr. Starker was a wizard of a cellist. And he did these things. He didn't invent them to irritate the rest of us. He used them himself. So, you could practice. I said this earlier, be careful, okay? Because if you haven't been using your thumb a lot, you can strain yourself. I'll never forget Mr. Starker telling me, don't spend more than 15 minutes a day doing finger exercises. He knew what he was talking about. You can injure yourself. So, a few minutes of thirds in thumb position, a few minutes of octaves if you have not doing them. These will definitely improve the strength of your thumb. And then the only book, there are lots of books. I'm not, the one that I used most was Mr. Starker's book, but he was one of my teachers and I admired him. And it helped me. I'd recommend getting that book. I hope that's helpful. And please be careful, okay? I'm repeating myself. I've known so many people who hurt themselves playing the cello. This is supposed to be something lovely, beautiful, joyful. It's not an instrument of war. I've known some people who treated a cello like it was a firearm. Never mind that remark. Okay, now you have a beautiful recording on YouTube. Oh, thank you. Summertime. He was such a great composer. How was your connection and collaboration with him? I can answer this. Walter Burley Marx's daughter, Madalena, was married to the oboe teacher at the University of Akron, where I taught for many years. And one day, and Walter Burley Marx came here as an elderly person to live with Madalena. And one day Madalena asked me, Michael, will you please learn that piece? I learned it. And the recording that you're referring to, that's the only time I ever played it. I played it one time for her. And I have to tell you, it's not an easy piece. There's one place I wish I could redo, but thank you very much for the nice comment. Oh, Jennifer, thank you. I've heard such great things about you from Jeff Levinson, and I hope I'll meet you one day. Thank you very much. Kevin Fix, hi Michael, do you have any tips for playing with pain? I have had numerous right shoulder injuries through the years. It seems playing is aggravating the shoulder. Okay, so Kevin, I'm not a doctor, and I don't know whether the problems that you are having, that you've developed them through playing. But the key thing is, and I gave two other cello chats, and in them, and I'm sure they're available, in them I talked at some length about how Mr. Starker helped me to learn to play without excessive tension by understanding how to use myself. I had the idea in my mind, there's dreams and music and art, and then there's this thing, and I have to get the ideas and dreams through the cello into sound. But I didn't know how to use my body in relation to the cello. I was doing just about everything wrong. And what he emphasized was he didn't tell you how to play. He didn't tell you what kind of sound to make or what interpretation. He taught us how do you use your body in relation to the cello so you don't wear your body out, and so that the cello sounds good when you touch it. So playing with pain, I have to tell you, I have a very low tolerance for pain. Personally, I couldn't do it. But if it's pain that has come from something else, why don't you look? Because I talked at great length about how much Mr. Starker helped me, and how, listen, were it not for the 1 year I studied with him, and the 2 years with Mihaly Virizlay, who, by the way, I forgot to mention, was the principal cellist of the Baltimore Symphony for many years, I never would have learned to play. I was so tight, but once I acquired some understanding. How do you do this? How do you touch this thing? How the energy's out here. What do you do? How do you use the bow? Then it's here. Oh my God, that's easy. You relax. And how do you shift? Do you go like that, or do you prepare it? How do you change the bow? Do you go like a train on a single track? No, you turn everything around and you move. And slowly, I acquired a way of playing. I mean, I'm 79 years old now. I never injured myself once. Mr. Starker, thank you. So I realized I didn't really answer your question, but perhaps you could look, and maybe there'll be some ideas that will be helpful to you. Playing with pain. Oh, listen, I'm being honest with you. I couldn't play with pain. I couldn't do it. But why don't you look at those programs and see if there's something in there to help you. Micah Lane, have you ever heard of the cellist Irving Lipschitz? Just wondering, there are few who are left who have stories to share. No, I'm sorry, I did not know him. Todd Keff, could you perform a short... No. Okay, you asked me to perform. Okay, I'm going to be honest with you. I stopped performing in public a few years ago. I'm 79 now. And, I'm not prepared to play on a Zoom session. I stopped playing in public not because I can't, but because... How many 79-year-old string players have you ever, any of you, heard in your life, with the exception maybe of Nathan Milstein, who sounded good at my age? And also, it was a lot of pressure. It's time for you guys to play. I'm sure everybody who's watching is younger. Could I play in public? I could. But, it's years now since I've walked out on stage, and I would have to get, I've kept my playing up because I still practice. But the mindset that allows one to deal with all the pressure of performing, that's a mindset I had, but I could acquire it again, but really, I don't know you. You're a young person. You do the playing now. I had my time on stage. Robert Maya, hello, I am truly enjoying your chat. Would you please provide some advice on how to overcome nerves? I believe I play a piece well during practice, but I play like a different person in front of my teacher. It is very frustrating. Robert, welcome to the club. Welcome to the club. Okay, again, I can own the only person I'm an expert about, unfortunately, is myself, which doesn't make me much of an expert. All I can do is tell you what it was for me. Especially, I'm a kind of a self-confident guy, but I wasn't with the cello because I started late. I suffered terribly in master classes, maybe not so much in lessons. The way I got myself out of this was time went by. I played more and more. I became more confident. My playing improved. And in time, although I think everybody becomes anxious before a performance. If you're dreaming of not being afraid, you're in the wrong profession. Actually, I remember an interview with a famous Cuban jazz musician. And somebody was asking him about nervousness. You know what he said? He says, if you're nervous, it proves that you care. It was a great answer. But you know what? If you continue, as you improve, as you play more, I promise you, in time, I became less nervous. And the key thing was the more I played, the more I trusted myself. You know, the last person wanted me to play something. I hadn't been on stage in years. How do you think I would feel trying to perform something right now? Well, you know how it would feel. But you know, just continue. I'm sorry, I don't have a trick. I think you will acquire more of your own self-confidence and believe in yourself. I don't know how old you are. I don't know where you are in your life, but just keep going. And you know what? Don't be shocked, okay? Listen, you know, for some people, the challenge is easier. You know, for example, I know a lot about myself. There's some things in life where nobody can shake my self-confidence. But with this, no. I mean, this is something I learned late that I wanted, but was difficult for me. So I always was nervous. I know very famous people who get nervous. So welcome to the club, and it'll get better. Luming Chan, how do you get chords on the Bach? You know what? Everybody is playing the Bach cello six. What would you say is the key to getting a brilliant sound on each of the strings? Okay, forgive me. That is not a cello suite. There are not 6 cello suites. There are 5 cello suites. The 6th one is for a completely different instrument. I just wish people would stop referring to the 6 Bach cello suites. So, the reason I can't answer your question successfully is the 6th suite, I'm just being honest with you. Maybe I could have learned it, but it is very, very hard. And you know what the irony is? Bach wanted that to be the easiest of all the suites. Why do you think he added a 5th string? All that stuff can be done in first position. Try playing the saraband in G major. It's all in first position. Not the saraband, not the G, whatever the next movement is. Try playing it in G major. Everything is a 5th down. You can use the open strings. There are some adjustments that need to be made. But basically, I'm sorry, I did not learn the 6th suite. To be perfectly honest with you, I had enough of a struggle just learning the pieces that were actually written for the cello. And that one was not written for the cello. Some people can play it well, but for me, it was too high a mountain to climb. But the key thing is to make sure that your intonation is in D major. You know, for instance, you don't put your F sharps and your C sharps to be too high, because they will not fit. I'm not sorry, F sharp. That will and C sharp, right? That they will not fit in the harmonies in the key of D major. So that is very important. Make sure those 2 notes that one tends to play sharp, and the third, that's right. The F sharp and especially the C sharp. Don't play them too high. The cello will ring more. I realize that's probably a perplexing answer, because everybody wants to play a piece that isn't even written for the cello. I'm sorry, I did not learn the 6th suite, so I'm sorry. I love your chats. Thank you. I think that's the end already? Okay, well, listen, this has been great fun for me. I hope those of you who watched, I hope there was something useful in all of this. The key thing that I have wanted to get across is how I too struggled with practicing well. I offered a whole bunch of tips about how to get out of a practice session that is really not going anywhere, because I did have strategies, and when I was mindful that I wasn't working well, those strategies were very effective, and thank you very much for watching. Okay, good night.